Hi, everybody. So welcome to Boswell Book Company's Lions Tooth's joint virtual event. I'm Daniel Golden, proprietor of Boswell. I like to say how many days we're open. It's 4,250 at the moment. We are very honored to be hosting Jim Terry, the prolific comic book artist who has worked on comics such as The Crows, Skinning the Wolves, Sundowners, and Vampirella, and has published a number of books on his own as well. We're working with Lions Tooth, and you can see Chris Sequeira and Shelley McClone Courier. Hope I got that right. From Lions Tooth, which is going to be opening in Bayview soon. And right now it is a dynamic online bookstore, soon to be bricks and also mortar. So they're going to join in the conversation, and I'm going to hope we're going to talk a little about their new bookstore too. Jim Terry's new book is called Come Home Indio, and after you read it, you'll probably have as many sticky notes as I will. It has been getting some great reviews, including a starred PW, where it wrote, Terry, as a child growing up between households and cultures, Irish-American fathers in the Chicago suburbs and native home-chunk mothers in the Wisconsin dells, is been told that he's too sensitive, but fortunately for readers of this raw and intimate graphic memoir, Terry never fully lets go of the youthful vulnerability. Reckoning with sobriety requires constant connection and humility, as Terry makes the case with sincerity and beauty as he ties his recovery to a spiritual homecoming. So welcome, Jim Terry. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Beautiful, heartbreaking memoir. Just, I stayed up all night reading it, and Chris and Shelley also told me how much they love it. They're making it a featured book in December in their good packages. So we're just going to ask you a few questions, maybe have you do a little reading. You're going to put your faith in me to be able to share some images as well. So my first question for you is going to be, you've had a pretty intense life. What made you decide, what was the incident that made you say, it is time for me to write this book?
Well, I think I'm hearing myself. How does that happen? I'm hearing an echo of me, which I don't mind terribly.
We don't hear the echo. So
okay. Maybe I'm just hearing it in my head. Maybe I'm thinking it, and 1 second later I'm saying it and mistaking it for an echo.
It's called instant memory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's gone anyways now. So I don't feel like I had an intense life. I feel like I had a normal life. But other people have said similar things, and I'm still, when you do something like this, you don't think about that stuff. I didn't think about that. But it is weird when people look at you as though you are, like with I won't say pity, but with like a look like, oh yeah. And, I don't really feel that way. I feel very lucky in my life. I feel very lucky about all the experiences I've had that have made me who I am today, because I kind of like who I am today. And I don't think that I ever thought now's the time. I'm definitely, now I'm thinking there will never be another time, but it really was, oddly enough, I was watching a movie called Tree of Life by Terrence Malick, and it's a movie that I like and maybe 5 other people really like. And I was watching it, and I found it, I was rewatching it, and I felt weirdly inspired by it. So I just doodled a one panel autobiographical moment from my youth that I was reminded of while watching the film, and I shared it on social media, and people connected to it, and I that was it. I didn't do anything else like that. The moment had passed, and I was back to drawing my monsters and vampires and stuff. And but Liz Francis, publisher of Street Noise approached me, and she had seen some of my work and asked if I was interested in telling my story. And at the time, she was asking about my experience at Standing Rock, which, I was only there for a few days, and I didn't feel qualified to comment on that. But the discussion grew, and then we talked about, okay, well, if I'm going to talk about that, I can talk about my experience. I can't talk about it as a whole, but I could talk about my experience. And then it was, well, I can't talk about my experience unless people understand where the genesis is and what brought me there. And then it just kind of snowballed from there into, oh, if I talk about that, I got to talk about my parents. And then it just became what it is. And it was pretty much done sequentially based off of that, and just like a steamroller just kept going.
For those who haven't read the book, your story is, your parents were both born in the Midwest. Your mom was Ho-Chunk. Your dad was a jazz musician in Chicago, Irish-American family, I guess. But you were actually born in California and had some formative years there, where your dad was very involved with music scene, especially salsa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They both happened to be out there for some odd reason. And I actually tried finding out. I knew why my dad was there. It was for the music scene. I still don't really know why my mom was out there, aside from it was the early 70s and she was trying to figure out who she was, perhaps.
You give the idea that your mom was interested in a lot of new age sort of things.
Well, let's just say she was ahead of her time before that was even a saying.
Well, except that California was also ahead of its time in that sort of thing. So
the
spirituality might have driven her a little.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. You write very intensely about your parents' divorce and growing up, being shuttled back and forth. I think you really bring that to, one of the things I really love about the book is you really write with such grace about the characters, even when things are not going well and they're not behaving that well. You really see the good in your parents and in the people around you, and you such terrific characterizations. How much work did you have to, did you realize how well you knew your parents when you were writing it, or did this sort of come as you were dealing with memories and things like that?
Oh, you know what? I still don't know. I still don't feel that I know them. They are a mystery to me. They always will be. But I think I understand their situations better now that I'm a little older, and I felt like I understood what was happening at the time a little differently, obviously, than I did when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're my parents, and I love them. I will always love them, even when they're doing, maybe not the best stuff. And that's part of the conflict, is that here you have people who are lost in their own ways sometimes and are struggling in their own ways, but you have this profound connection with them, and it's impossible to reconcile those two things when you're going through it, especially at that age, and so I've always been a very emotional very emotional person, and I've struggled with that my whole life, just being ruled by my emotions, and but looking at things. So when I was going through that stuff, it was anger, whatever, mostly anger, and and then you get older and things simmer down and you get a different perspective, and I was able to look at things in a broader way. I was able to pull back on the canvas and see that there was more stuff going on than my self-involved little kid head was perceiving, and that has helped me to understand the struggles that they were going through in a way that no kid can.
One of the things, this is very much there's a lot of themes in the book, but it's definitely a story of addiction and recovery. And one of the things that's really was fascinating for me is that as a kid, you it happened to you, but you were so self-aware beforehand. Like you saw what had happened to your parents, and you did have this long period in your life where you were like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be in control. And I don't think people always realize that it doesn't, so much of our lives is out of our control. And what an inspiring, the way that you capture that is really fascinating.
Well, thank you. It's something that I can recall fairly viscerally, especially the loathing. I mean, I can still smell the alcohol in the living room. I can recall that feeling very well. And it was it was a bad and unpredictable feeling to have. And that sort of triggered all those responses, that just that olfactory memory was like, oh God, yeah.
Oh my God, this book practically has smell-o-vision, because you can smell it off the page. You're reading this and you capture with your art and with your words, you capture the smells and the sounds and it just feels, it's so visceral. I was going to pull up that image that you had shared with me of your dad. I think that would tie in a little to what we're talking about.
Now that we're here, let's just show it.
All right. Why don't you talk? Well, we've shown it.
This is the cover, and I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's the cover.
Chris, you'll read it.
Beautiful.
Talk a little about your reading influences. You were past a few books, and one of the books that really influenced you was Flowers for Algernon. Would you talk a little about how that affected you?
Well, you know what? Since you have it up, why don't I just read the words just for this one here?
Okay.
All right, let me see. I just handily, by chance, have a copy of the book here.
Yay!
All right, so I'll go ahead and read from the top of the page. My grades were in the gutter. I was failing reading, which Don and my mom found unforgivable. They sat me down. Don't like reading? Okay, then, you're grounded for the summer. I feel sick. I was given 3 books to read without pictures and was grounded from anything else until Don thoroughly quizzed me on them. No friends, no Atari, no pools, movies, cartoons, comics, G.I. Joes, Star Wars, Matchbox, baseball, bikes, life. Hating every word, I slogged through Lord of the Flies, understanding little. What's a conch? Stupid, stupid book. I raged, fumbling through the strange One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's not fair. I just don't get it. My acting needs some improvement. Finally, Flowers for Algernon. It began as though written by a child. Well, here goes. One more stupid book left. Weird. Wonder why the writing is like this. As the narrator grew smarter and the writing changed, something in my brain unlocked. I devoured the book. My stomach is in a knot. I don't want this to end sad. I don't want it to end. And that was my experience with that. And on the next page, they come and I show up and tell them, okay, I'm done reading. What do I have to read next? And they took me to the library and gave me a library card and said, okay, well, you could pick whatever you want to read for the next one. And it was a revelation to me to have so many options, and to actually, it was like eating dessert. It was like, okay, now I've eaten my vegetables. Now I get to enjoy something. And I immediately picked Cujo by Stephen King because it had a terrifying cover. And I learned a lot of really grown-up words when I read that book.
I love how later on in the book, your mom is reading a Stephen King book too.
Yeah, she loved him.
Yeah. He's been influential to so many writers and readers. Talk a little about your another influence, which we were talking about for the graphic novel store, is Will Eisner. Talk about how that has affected you.
Well, you know, it's kind of involved because at the time that I discovered him was a massive turning point in my life. And, you know, I would be remiss to not mention the fact that, you know, my entire 20s were spent in a self-destructive, drunken haze. And when I came out of that, I was 32 when I got sober. And it was a painful process. And when it was over and I was, well, okay, not when it was over, but when I had when I had become in recovery, I suddenly found myself with very little. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I had spent so much time leaning on alcohol that I didn't really. I was suddenly walking on these wobbly legs, and I didn't know what direction to go in. And I was in the comic store because I never have lost my love of comics, and I saw this Will Eisner book, New York: Life in the Big City. It was a compilation of a couple different books, and I had heard of Will Eisner. You know, I knew who he was. I knew he was a legend, but I didn't really ever seek him out. And this book was like $30, which at that time was a big deal to me. I said, you know what, I'm just gonna take a chance on this. And I had looked through it and it looked beautiful. So uh, not to get maudlin, but I am a very maudlin person, so I might as well get it out of the way. I I wept when I read that book. It was unlike anything I had ever read, especially in a graphic novel form. You know, sequential storytelling. I had never seen anything the stories like that, and even thinking about them right now makes my throat constrict a little bit. Just how incredibly moving they were. They were stories about normal people, and they were told and with an amount of compassion that wasn't sentimental. And I'm a very sentimental person, but these were told in a humanistic way that was not sentimental, but it did not flinch at ripping your heart to pieces, and it did to me. And it was profound. And also the artwork was cartooning. It was cartooning. It wasn't fine art. It wasn't illustration. It wasn't photorealistic in any way. It was cartooning, and I was liberated by that, you know. And then later, because of that, I started using a brush. I had never used a brush before, and I started using a brush, and that freed things up. And but the very core of what that book was a revelation to me. The idea that I could tell any story about anything. And you know, he told stories about people in one page, and it gave you an entire life. It's really astounding. And it had an effect on me that I couldn't even begin to describe. So it lit a fire in me that I thought was dead. When I got sober, I was worried that the inspiration would never come. The inspiration would never come again, and that without, you know, having a couple beers or whatever, I would never be loose enough to express myself in any way. And suddenly I realized that all that stuff that I made myself believe before was a manipulation against myself to keep myself from doing what I was capable of. And so when I read that book, it was liberating to me. And suddenly I said, okay, well, I can't do this anymore, and I don't have to. I can do this. And it put me in an entirely different direction, and I'll never be able to repay that.
It's such an arc. I mean, you know, you just really capture the going sobriety process, and then to have the art give you such a sense of purpose is just like it's really just what we need as a reader. And it also inspires, I think, probably, you know, not just as a reader to say, oh good, this story is going to have to come out of that darkness, but also to realize that there are so many potential gifts in our lives, you know, if we keep our eyes out for them. I just love, yeah, go ahead.
I love that one panel where you say, this feels exactly right. And you're like, you're learning how you're, getting beat by the brush and it's really difficult to do. And then you go, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing now. And that character of art being something that is liberating, something that elevates you, and that you go, this is my destiny. This is what I should be doing. And I'm here doing exactly. So I thought that was really like a redemptive character of art from everything, from life, because life is not easy for anybody, right? And having art to be that liberating force, I thought that was very powerful. I also wanted to ask if you cry because I cried a bucket reading this book. I'm also sentimental, I'm Latin sentimental, so it goes like all the way. But I asked the Hernandez brothers, I asked Gilbert Hernandez, do you cry when you are drawing? He's like, nope. And I asked his wife, do you cry when you read it? Nope. And I'm like, I'm the only one who's crying here. So I'm gonna ask, do you cry when you're immersed in the memories and in the memoir, where did you have to take breaks and through the process, or do you have to spend so much time with the page that?
Well, the deadline that I was given did not allow me to take too many breaks. We talked about it, and she had an idea when she wanted to release it, so it had to be done by a certain time. And at the time, I was doing the Crow versus Hack Slash, and I was penciling, inking, and coloring that book. And I said, I can't get to this thing until I'm done with this. I have to put it on the back shelf and just put my head down and make sure that I get this done. And once I got that done, I had about 6 months, 5 months to get it done. So I basically, did it all, did like 2 issues a month of this book. So it's about 40 pages a month. But thankfully, I'm familiar with the story. So I didn't have to think of any plot twists. They were all there. And I just started working through, and it was emotional. And toward the end, and I won't say that I cried. I don't think I cried when I did this, but I laughed a lot, which was surprising. There were moments that you just think back and you're like, oh man, that was all right, And but I got to say, the second half up to getting sober was a pretty miserable thing to illustrate, and I had to put it out of my mind that anybody was going to read this while I was doing it, because if I did that, I probably wouldn't have been as honest as I ended up being about some of this stuff. And I remember going into the studio. I'm a member of a studio here in Chicago, the 4-Star, and I was drawing a part where I was, getting sick, and I was deathly ill and having, minor hallucinations and stuff. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, this is a drag. This is a real drag. And, so I had moments like that where I just felt exhausted by it, but in all honesty, in the program of sobriety that I'm in, I have to examine that stuff and think about it often. And I have to talk about it often. And so it wasn't unfamiliar terrain for me to drudge all that up. But drawing it is a different story. And I got to say, I was so sick of my face at the end of this experience. I was like, let me draw some blonde-haired person or something, I'm sick and tired of drawing this guy, so there was that exhaustion.
Well, one question I'm really curious about is I'm used to speaking to folks who are not illustrating their own work, except when they're like children's books or something like that, but there's not the panels, less panels. What do you like? People are always talking about changing their narrative and taking this out, and I went in this direction, and I boxed. What do you do when there's so much more investment in each page? Does that really give you no room to make changes, or do you wind up having to make changes in a story like this?
I think that, when I tackled this, I went under the the idea that whoever might be reading this, maybe they aren't particularly familiar with the graphic novel format. So I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it in a 6-panel framework for the most part, except for, profound moments or moments of reflection that need a larger panel. But for the most part, it's just going to be a basic 6-panel thing because it's easy to read, and I'm kind of geared toward the classic storytelling anyways, the old EC guys and stuff like that. So that was a comfortable way for me to work. And I also tried to make, I don't know, not a sequence, but like whatever thought carries itself through. I tried not to make it more than a page. So each little moment is about a page long, so very rarely did it bleed into 2 or 3 pages of a sequence until later on when I was in the throes of my difficulties. Then it had to have like a avalanche feeling. But before that, they were recollections, so I could keep it to about a page and, have maybe a couple pages thematically meshed together. But so when it came time to edit, there wasn't a lot of puzzle placing to be done because it was all pretty sequential and I it's pretty much in the page order that I drew them in. And so there were pages that, I guess didn't need to be in there. So they saw the front door, but there were, for the most part, the editors were very generous and they let me tell what I wanted to. And they help because I can get in my own head, especially when I'm telling a story. One of the things that I'm constantly being told is that I assume the reader knows too much. And so I will leave things to your imagination that maybe I shouldn't. So, the editors would be like, I don't understand what you're trying to say here. Oh, okay. So that was really helpful, but not a lot of rearranging or anything like that. It was pretty straightforward and at just a breakneck speed of working. So there wasn't a lot of time to second guess anything either.
You really bring characters to life very quickly. I just like in very few panels, it's hard not to fall in love with your grandparents, both on your dad's grandpa and grandma on your father's side, and what Kunika and Chopka. Did I have that right? On your mom's side. There's just really. Do you want to talk a little about them? Like how you're like. I guess I said they're so full of life in such a short period. They'd be very proud.
I have to amend my previous statement because originally I didn't have my grandma and grandpa Terry in there. I didn't want to draw them. That's the honest truth. There was something about them. I didn't want to draw them and make them cartoons, which is strange now that I'm saying it out loud. So that's why they're, kind of in silhouette for the most part. And, you see them a couple times briefly, but I don't involve them too much because it's a cherished time, and I tried to portray that, and I tried to portray that they were anchors, and they were kind, and I think that's all I could say about it. That was my relationship with them. It wasn't a complicated relationship, that needed to be super explored. It was something that existed and I was grateful for. And it was brief as well. I didn't see them all the time. I wasn't raised by them, but the times that I saw them were times of safety and structure and calm. And so I was grateful for that, tried to portray it as such. But again, my relationship with them was a grandkid, a happy grandkid, seeing his grandma and grandpa and enjoying that time. And there wasn't drama. There was no drama with them, so it was, what else is there to be said? A couple pages.
Let me just say that you could use a relationship without drama. So
yeah.
I'm glad for you.
Yeah.
Your relationship with your sister is just amazing. I mean, Elena, I had asked you, and you said you had her take a look at the book before it came out, because I asked, and I was like, how could she not be happy with this book? But I hope she was. Did she?
I don't think she's thrilled about everything in it. I just, she's a very professional person who is doing great things in her own right now with food sovereignty and doing getting back to decolonized food, and she's a part of that entire movement, and she's doing really well in it. And so there's personal stuff. There's stuff in here that is about our childhood, which was a shared experience, and there's no way I was going to put anything out in the world that she wasn't okay with. So I sent it to her, and she gave me her blessing and said, yeah, these things need to be talked about. And I think that one of my great fears was, I don't want to demonize anybody. I certainly don't want to demonize my parents. I love them, and last thing I want to do is make them villains in a story. And but there is ugliness that happens in people's lives, and I think the more I don't know if I ever put this into words or even thought it, but the more that we don't talk about these things, it perpetuates. And I think that it's important to realize that you don't know what anybody's going through. You don't know where anybody came from. You don't know what they're going through at that time. You don't know their story, and you can't unless they tell you. And so I'll tell my story. Maybe somebody will relate to it. That's the only reason to do something like this, right? I mean, maybe I am a megalomaniac, but I don't think of myself that way, So I don't think like, hey, you should hear my story, that just repulses me just saying it, So it's like, well, God, this is this story could be a drag, but maybe somebody will be helped by it, and that's the only reason to do something like this. And so she was on board for that reason, and I'm glad that she was.
She kind of embraced her family spirituality and indigenous, like you capture that where you were sort of estranged a little when you were younger, that she was much more connected with your grandparents, and it sounds like she's carried on a lot of the things that she learned from them now. But you talk about a life-changing experience reading Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. I think we actually have that image.
It's weirdly the action scene, and it's an emotional action scene, so it's really interesting.
This is where you talked about how you really bring that your emotion, like you have these like very emotional scenes in the book, and really capture that. You want to talk a little about Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee and how you didn't like it was just a revelation to you in a lot of ways.
It was. Boy, I'll tell you, that book followed me around for a long time. My stepfather had it. I don't know if it was his or my mom's. I suspect it was his, and he was Irish, but the book was written by D. Brown, who's a white man. And I carried that book around with me for a long time. And finally, it's in the book, it's in the memoir. I drifted from a lot of what I was raised with. I drifted from it for a long time while I was in the throes of my addiction. And but through the haze, I decided I needed to read this book. I never stopped reading, and so I read the book, and I don't want to say anything disparaging. That when I was growing up, I saw a lot of not easy things, difficult things, and I associated a lot of that with my heritage. Erroneously associated a lot of that with my heritage, and so I didn't turn my head toward it. And but when I read this book, it's really a graphic and difficult exposure of what was actually going on during, quote unquote, how the West was won. And it's a heartbreaker, and it's devastating. And when I read it, I suddenly had a different understanding of what my people had gone through. Because it's not talked about, and it's not talked about in schools. It's definitely not talked about in schools, at least not when I was growing up. And it's not talked about in films. It's not talked about in movies or television shows. And suddenly to be confronted with the raw brutality of what was actually going on was a devastating eye opener to me. And it felt like somebody had reached into my chest and pulled out my heart. And so that's what I'm trying to convey here. I can't do that in words, really. Of the images is much closer to what it felt like. The weight of this book and the weight of what I was learning is, I understand why people don't want to know. It's opening a door that you can't close. And so I've recommended this book to just about anybody that will listen. I have yet to meet anybody that has finished it.
No.
They all peter out and they say, I can't do it. It's too much. It's too much.
I like what you said, like you can't put the genie back in the jar, kind of like you can't unsee what you see. And I really like this panel, don't ask how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
And kind of like this is a year of reckoning for America, supposedly. We've had many others before. Hopefully this time it will stick. But it is this curve that you had. I feel like it's a curve that a lot of people of color go through, that, you're like, I'm not going to look that way. But once you look, you can't unsee what you see, and you can't take that out of your experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was, it definitely, I was no longer able to ignore certain things, which is the price of knowledge, right? The price of discovery.
Yeah, Wisconsin does have a Native American education program, and it's actually driven, I think, by Native American educators. We hosted one of them a few years ago who's written a book on it. So I was hoping things are getting better. It's certainly there's been a lot of talk this year, much more so in the past. So
yeah. Well, I know I have friends that are educators, and they're my age or even younger, who are determined to change, what is taught and how things are taught. And that's encouraging to me, because there's a sequence in the book where it shows the kinds of things I was taught when I was in school, and it had nothing to do with where I came from. Yeah.
I want to ask you, because you said your sister is an activist, and I feel like there was also another book this year, like Joe Sacco's Paying the Land.
Land, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book that he's talking about Native peoples of Northern Canada and in the Northern Territories. And one of the things is a lot of the young generation finds solace in activism, in becoming, they find the reconcile with their identity. They find the way to move forward from this state of being overwhelmed by the facts of our history, to move forward and going towards activism. And it's interesting to me that your sister's involved with that. And you do this.
Do I say that she's an activist?
That she's doing like the that she's working with
decolonization of food.
Decolonization of food.
Yeah. Well, I think she's definitely activated in the trying to bring our culture back, which is a huge undertaking for anybody that endeavors to do so. I'm just a comic book artist. I just make my scribbles and hide in the dark.
But
I
think
just want to say,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Chris, I just want to, before you go, I just want to say there's lots of ways to contribute to your community. So I think you're doing a lot more than you say.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think this book does that in a way. It kind of goes back to that moment. And I think that for other people reading it, it's inspiring in that way. You
I hope
know,
so.
that the experience, they're not having this experience alone. You know, other people, and maybe people who like the pop culture stuff that they like. You know, you don't
A lot of
have,
that in there. Yeah.
you know, yeah. You know, the people who draw Vampirella can also have these feelings. And I think that's a very important because it's not a unilateral, you know, kind of identity that you have to embrace. And then, you know what I mean? So I think that's very, very,
We one of the things I wanted to, I mean, you do when you said you originally were commissioned for the work, you were going to bring in the Dakota Access Pipeline, and you actually make it sort of the uh, final moments of the story, which you do in an incredible way. I was curious and wanted to hear why about your decision to change your writing style, your writing art style for that part of the book.
Yeah, well, that was a conscious decision that I came to way before I even put pen to paper, and it actually was going to be all typewritten prose initially, and I had written entire pages full of like journalistic, just this is what I'm seeing, and then I just kind of shelved it and did the rest of the book leading up to it. And by the time I got to that point, I realized that was just it was cold and impersonal. But I did not want to draw it in the manner of the rest of the book because the expressive and cartoonish quality of the other book, the storytelling thus far, was me, and it served the purpose of conveying my emotions and what I was thinking and what others around me, how they were behaving. And once that Standing Rock sequence happened, I was like, well, I don't want to cartoonize this. I don't want to make this a cartoon, and being Native, there are a lot of things that you just, it's not cool to share. It's not cool to take pictures of things. It's not cool to talk about certain things. And I couldn't honestly be sure that I didn't want to share anything that I wasn't supposed to visually. And I didn't want to talk about things that I wasn't qualified to talk about. So all I could do was share my experience. So that became, I knew that I didn't want to typewrite it. So I just hand wrote it. And that felt more organic and true to the rest of the book and to who I am actually, And so I just hand wrote those sequences, but I didn't want to illustrate it the way the rest of the book was. And Liz, the publisher, had suggested doing some large drawings, some large illustrations. And I just tried to think of things that were tonal in nature or just not necessarily representative of certain things, but could be seen as that way, So it was the most difficult part for me to work on was that sequence. That was more difficult than drawing myself having imaginary conversations with Conan O'Brien in my underwear. The Standing Rock stuff, it was tough for me to do because I felt like a little ant in that situation, and I didn't want to give any impression that I was anything other than that.
Well, you do a
But
beautiful
also,
job.
yeah, but also show what I saw and how it moved me. As I say in the book, I came there, I went there thinking I would help out in some way. Maybe I can give something, I don't know. And I ended up just taking. I just took the whole time I was there. I just absorbed everything and I took it, and it like Will Eisner and like many things in this book, it changed me. I'm not out there, fighting the good fight every day. I'm not, I'm exhausted and I'm just getting by most of the time. but it certainly changed the way that I see things. It changed the way that I attack things in my head, issues. It showed me that there was a way of looking at things that was so radically different than the way I'm taught by our society in general. Be scared, be afraid of that guy. You shouldn't trust this guy. This guy wants what you have. You should protect what you have. And suddenly it was, this guy wants what I have. Well, we can share it. Yeah. Oh, I don't know who that guy is. Well, I'm going to have him over and we're going to talk and I'm going to get to know him. It was things that were so fundamentally, they made sense. They made absolute sense, but I rarely saw people have the courage to follow through on it. And that's what I was seeing there. And it was inspiring to me in a way that I failed to even get close to in this.
You have one of the things about those passages is the natural beauty scenes. You actually do a great job of finding the beauty in every place, even the grittiest parts of Chicago. And particularly, I can't really do it justice because we don't have but that the tree scene is just on page 66.
Yeah.
You could frame that and sell it. So.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's I love drawing nature. I spent my entire 20s, as a drunken scoundrel in the city. So I'm very familiar with the alleyways and the gutters, but now as I'm older, I like to go out on walks and bring a sketchbook and draw the trees. And, I've always, it's kind of a generic artist thing to say Mother Nature is the greatest artist. But really, it's true. You go out there and you look at a tree, you couldn't imagine that, and so I took great delight in drawing. And I'm also I love drawing organic things. I hate drawing cars. All the cars in here look like Flintstone boxes, I loathe drawing them. I don't like mechanics. I don't like drawing buildings, so it was a joy to me to draw those, especially the dells, drawing the dells when I was growing up. It had, and it was seen through the eyes of a kid, so there's a certain quality of magic that I've infused. It might be, just a recollection and not even anything how it was, but that's how I saw it and that's how it felt. And to draw that was a joy. And it was spooky. I like spooky stuff, and I didn't when I was a kid. I didn't like riding through those woods at night. It was terrifying.
Oh, that passage. You really capture that. That's bicycle riding at night. Oh,
yeah, terrifying.
Before we want to talk a little about the Lion's Tooth, but I did want to mention this is a good transitional question because we haven't really captured how much you love pop culture, how much Star Wars there is in the book. How much horror. We talk a little about your love, and has that dissipated over the years? Or are you still, No,
I mean, you can see my Lord of the Rings Tolkien shelf here. I've got, this is all Tolkien and various Lord of the Rings volumes, Hobbit volumes. There's a Gollum. I bought that Gollum at a shop in Chinatown, and it was just randomly there. There was glass and, urns and stuff like that. And there's a Gollum. And I was like, this is meant for me. I have to take it home, even though everybody thinks it's like this weird junkie on a rock. No, it's Gollum. And I know that. And, and, so I'm still that guy. My favorite thing and what's, one of the things that I really miss right now during all this is not being able to go to horror conventions. That's where I get to be a kid. I attend comic shows and I sit behind the table and I do my job and I love meeting people. But when I go to horror conventions, I put on my backpack, put my hat on and just rifle through stuff, and get autographs. I get my picture taken with Dee Wallace and I'm sweating and shaking, So I love that, and I miss it. I can't wait to get back to, just being able to interact with my fellow nerds.
Nerd power. What are some of your other favorites in the genre? Like what are some of your other suggestions?
Oh, geez. Well, like I said, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I still read Fangoria. It's in its second publishing. I watch Joe Bob Briggs whenever he's on the Shutter Network. I'm into that stuff. I read all the time. These books are real. And, a lot of these books we were talking beforehand, that I was working at B. Dalton Bookstore. And so many of these are from there. I won't say how I got them, but I have.
Hey, Jim, can I ask you a question? Do you know Coffin Joe?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's from my city.
South of the border. Yeah.
Yep.
He's hard to find, though. You have to hunt him down up here.
Yeah, he passed away this year. He was really old. He had been sick for a long time, but I remember, what was the name of, I forgot the name of the video people that did all the B movies. They released his stuff all at once. Trauma. No, it wasn't Trauma. It was somebody else. They released it all at once, and then you never saw it again for a while. So
that's a
box set. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always looking for obscure horror stuff, and most of it is, it's there and then it's gone, and then you look online and it's $900.
Right. Yeah.
Because there are only 10 of them made.
Right. Yeah.
Well, why don't we talk about? I mean, I was just gonna ask if you like the Stephen Graham Jones, but I'm guessing you did. Like the biggest horror book of the year is. Have you read it?
I don't know it. No.
Oh yeah, you got to read it. It's called I have a lot of horror readers in my store who I work with, and the book you want to read is, and then we're going to pass it on. But this is book recommendations.
Okay.
You want to read? It's called The Only Good Indians. Came out this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I think you need to read it. It'll be combining two interests of yours together.
Okay. Yeah, I'm vaguely interested in both. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's talk a little about your store. I heard you signed a lease.
You know what? We bought the building.
You bought. That's right. That's like bigger than a lease.
Yeah.
You signed the mortgage, I should say.
Because we're not completely out of our minds in the pandemic year.
You're committed. Yeah.
Apparently we are. We've been planning the store for a long time. My partner Shelly and I, we were supposed to open right before the Democratic convention. So that did not happen. We had a couple of buildings that we looked at. We're trying to, have different, it's a bookstore like Boswell's general interest bookstore. We're we don't even know what the market in Milwaukee is for what we're doing. That is a specific graphic novels for kids and adults. And we're thinking a lot of it as a space. Shelly is one of the co-founders of the co-op in River West.
Oh, sure.
So we're thinking of a place that's going to be a cafe, bookstore, and try to have different revenue streams. So maybe we'll, sell enough coffee that we can have the books that we want, because we don't have a lot of space, so we have to curate them. So maybe we'll have the books that not a lot of people know because of that, So one thing feeding the other.
One of the great things about about COVID is that you're able to practice. You're gonna have your online business, which is going to be very important for you.
Yeah.
Because to be a specialist, you really want to capture the market larger than the geographical one.
Yes, the thing for us, we started with a subscription program, and so we're featuring Come Home Indio in December. We have beautiful book plates that were made for us by Jim. Thank you so much. But what we're doing right now, if you buy the book at the store, I'll send you a book plate, Jim.
You did beautiful book plates for both of us.
Yes.
If you Yes, but you also have it in your subscription box, too,
Right. So in the
which is
subscription
just great.
box, that's what we try to do. We try to put little treats. We always feature a local artist as well. In December, we're featuring an artist that did like a calendar. So we're trying to do a mix of things. Like, why would you buy the book from us on the mail if you can go to a bookstore in person and get it right away? Trying to give different rewards for that experience, you know.
Yeah,
So
sounds
we've been
great.
doing that for a year. So we had 12 months of practicing that, and practicing curating and practicing it. Like I said, I was telling you guys before, I had a bookstore a long time ago in Brazil, but book selling in America is a completely different beast, and we're just happy that wonderful books like this one can come out and we're able to feature them, and even talking about they're not everybody's telling the same story, you know, like it's a different story that people are telling. So we're really happy about it.
And one of the great things we did too was we empowered some teens and helped them create their first zine and publish their first zine, which was
Great.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been trying to do that, and we go through the whole process with them, like, you know, if they never did a zine before, and it's young people making comic books, so it's really it's something hopeful and nice for somebody like me, because for a while it looked like, oh, people are not going to like comic books anymore, you know, and I didn't care because I wasn't still going to like them, but now it seems like more young people are liking them again, so you feel less alone, I guess.
May I ask what you're working on now, Jim?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm working on some things, you know, nothing really to get too excited about yet. But yeah, I'm working on some stuff. You know, in all honesty, this burned me out for a little while, and I finished it right at the beginning of COVID, and then COVID burned me out. And you know, it's hard to. There was a period where nobody was, you know, shipping books, and you know, everything got weird, and you know, can I just say this one thing?
Yeah.
They, you know. There are a lot of people when this was happening that were like, oh, well, I guess I need to find a new career. I guess comics are done for, you know, and I just kept thinking about this thing that Eisner said. And, you know, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he talked about, you know, he had been in the industry since its inception. You know, he was there at the first comics that were published. And he said every year, you know, it's, oh, this is the end. This is the end. No more comics. And he said, you know, it's been throughout the entirety of its existence. People have thought it was over. And he said, and the only thing that lasts is the work. You know, so the doubts that, you know, all of the doomsaying and all that will either happen or it will pass, but the work will remain, you know. So I try to keep that in mind. I'm not great at it, but, you know, that's something to think about for me.
Well, yet another great quality about you is your modesty. We beg to differ, so we think you are great at it. 3 big recommendations for Come Home Indio. However you buy it, if you're watching remotely, buy it at your favorite store. Thank you so much. Some last words, either of you, Shelley or Chris?
Well, we're just want to thank Boswell as an institution in Milwaukee. We're clients, we're fans. We're so happy to be able to join the same community of, I think that Milwaukee can become a hub for books, and maybe we'll have great conventions here and things like that. Like we do think that this is a happy time for books, even though the world is crumbling. If the COVID made it clear how much people need books and how much.
We've got another bookstore opening in Bronzeville, so
Hey,
niche. So things are happening.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Thank you so much. Jim, we're so grateful for your book and for you coming tonight.
Oh, I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you all.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me. You guys take care.
All right.